My best friend stole my boyfriend, and now she's acting like I'm the one overreacting. When I confronted her, she said I wasn't being a good girlfriend anyway. When I first found out that my best friend Lily had been seeing my boyfriend behind my back, I couldn't believe it. I'm 26, and my now ex-boyfriend, Max, is 28. We've been together for over 3 years, and things were serious. Or at least, I thought they were. Lily and I had been best friends since college. We did everything together, study sessions, nights out, trips, you name it. I never in my wildest dreams thought she'd do something like this to me. We had that ride or die kind of bond, or so I thought. It started with small things I didn't pay much attention to at first. Max had been acting distant for a few weeks. Nothing too obvious, but just enough to make me wonder what was going on. He was texting less, canceling plans more frequently, and when we did hang out, he seemed distracted. I chalked it up to work stress. He had just gotten a promotion, and I figured he was overwhelmed. I tried to be understanding, to give him space. But in the back of my mind, something felt off. Lily, on the other hand, had been acting strange too. She was my go-to for everything, but recently, she'd been blowing me off more and more. Normally, we'd text all day, every day about everything. But suddenly, she wasn't responding to my messages as quickly, and when I'd ask her to hang out, she'd always say she was busy. I didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, people get busy. But looking back, it all seems so obvious now. I feel so stupid for not putting the pieces together sooner. One weekend, Max told me he had to work late and couldn't make it to dinner with my family like we'd planned. I was disappointed but didn't want to push him. That same night, I texted Lily to see if she wanted to grab a drink, but she didn't respond for hours, which was weird for her. I ended up staying home watching Netflix and trying not to let my imagination get the best of me. But something just didn't sit right. My gut was telling me something was wrong, but I kept ignoring it, convincing myself I was being paranoid. A few days later, I met up with another friend of mine, Sarah, for coffee. We were catching up when she casually mentioned seeing Max and Lily out together a couple of nights ago. My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Sarah looked confused. "I saw them at that bar downtown. I'd assumed you were with them, but I didn't see you." I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. I hadn't seen Max or Lily that night, and neither of them had mentioned anything about hanging out together. I could feel the blood rushing to my ears as I tried to process what she was saying. When I got home, I texted Max, asking him about the night Sarah saw them. He responded quickly, saying he had run into Lily while he was out with a few coworkers, and that it was no big deal. "Just coincidence," he wrote. I wanted to believe him, but the uneasy feeling in my gut was growing stronger by the minute. I texted Lily too, and she gave me the same story, that they had just bumped into each other and had a quick drink. But something about it didn't add up. They were both acting way too casual about it. For the next week, I tried to shake the feeling that something was going on, but it was impossible. Every time I was with Max, I noticed things that didn't sit right. He was on his phone constantly, texting someone with a little smile on his face, but when I asked who it was, he would just say it was work. And Lily, she was still distant, and every time I asked if she wanted to hang out, she had some excuse ready. It felt like I was being pushed to the sidelines, but I couldn't figure out why. I kept hoping it was all in my head. The final straw came when I checked Max's phone. I've never been the type to snoop, but after weeks of feeling like I was losing my mind, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until he was in the shower, then grabbed his phone off the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his messages. At first, everything seemed normal, just boring work texts and group chats. But then I found a hidden folder, and when I opened it, I saw dozens of texts from Lily. My heart sank. They were flirty, intimate, and way too familiar for just friends. The texts confirmed what I had been dreading. They had been sneaking around behind my back for at least 2 months, meeting up whenever I wasn't around, talking about how fun it was to keep it a secret. My stomach turned as I read message after message, some of them making me physically sick. The worst part, Max had sent her a picture of us together just a few days earlier, and she had responded with a laughing emoji. They were mocking me, enjoying the fact that I was clueless. I felt like a complete idiot. I confronted Max that night, shoving his phone in his face, and demanding an explanation. He froze, his eyes wide with panic. "It's not what you think," he stammered. "We were just messing around. It didn't mean anything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Messing around?" I shouted. "You've been seeing my best friend behind my back for months. How could you do this to me?" He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, looking guilty, while I felt like my entire world was collapsing around me. The next day, I went to confront Lily. I needed to hear it from her. When I showed up at her apartment, she opened the door and looked surprised to see me. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She let me in, and we sat down in her living room. I wasted no time. "I know about you and Max," I said, watching her face closely. For a second, she looked shocked, like she didn't know what to say. But then she shrugged. "I figured you'd find out eventually." Her response floored me. I had expected her to deny it, to beg for my forgiveness, but instead, she just acted like it wasn't a big deal. "What do you mean, you figured I'd find out?" I asked, my voice shaking. She sighed and leaned back on the couch. "Look, I didn't plan for this to happen, okay? But it did, and honestly, you haven't exactly been the best girlfriend to Max, so can you really blame him?" My jaw dropped. "Are you seriously trying to justify this?" I asked, incredulous. "You're my best friend. How could you do this to me?" Lily rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic," she said. "It's not like you and Max were going to last anyway. I mean, come on, you've been fighting for months. He deserves to be with someone who makes him happy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My best friend, the person I trusted more than anyone, was sitting there, trying to convince me that this was somehow my fault. That I wasn't good enough for Max, so she was doing me a favor by taking him off my hands. I felt like I was in a nightmare. I was too stunned to speak at first, but then the anger kicked in. "You're unbelievable," I said, standing up and grabbing my bag. "You destroyed our friendship for a guy, and you don't even care. You and Max deserve each other." Lily just shrugged again, like it didn't bother her. "Fine. If that's how you feel, then go ahead and be mad. But I'm not going to apologize for something that wasn't entirely my fault. Max wanted out of the relationship, and I was there for him. End of story." I walked out of her apartment, my mind spinning. I couldn't believe how cold and unapologetic she had been. I had lost not only my boyfriend but also my best friend in the span of a few hours. And the worst part was, they were both acting like I was the problem, like I was the one overreacting. I felt like I was living in some twisted alternate reality where nothing made sense. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? How had I missed all the signs? The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Everywhere I turned, there was a reminder of Max or Lily. We had so many mutual friends, and trying to explain the situation to them without breaking down was nearly impossible. Most people were shocked, but a few had seen it coming. I always thought there was something weird about how close they were, one friend told me. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't have proof, but it just felt off. Hearing that made me feel even worse. Was everyone seeing this but me? Max tried reaching out a few times after I left him. He sent long texts apologizing, saying he made a mistake and that he still cared about me. But his apologies felt hollow. How could he say he cared about me after everything he'd done? He had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. I didn't respond to any of his messages. I couldn't. I knew if I opened that door, I'd be dragged back into the same mess, and I deserved better than that. I deserved someone who would never put me in that position. Lily, on the other hand, didn't even bother apologizing. After our confrontation, she acted like nothing had happened. She kept posting pictures on social media, hanging out with our mutual friends, like she hadn't just blown up my life. It was infuriating. I wanted to scream every time I saw her face pop up on my feed, laughing and having fun like she didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was sitting at home, heartbroken and trying to piece my life back together. One night, after too many glasses of wine, I ended up calling Lily. I hadn't planned on it, but the anger and hurt were bubbling up inside me, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. She answered after a few rings, sounding surprised to hear from me. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone cold. "I want to know why," I said, my voice trembling. "Why did you do this? Why couldn't you just talk to me instead of going behind my back?" There was a long pause before she finally responded. "I don't know," she said, sounding more annoyed than guilty. "It just happened, okay? Max and I have a connection that you and he never had. I didn't plan for this, but I'm not going to feel bad about it either. You weren't a good girlfriend, and he needed someone who was there for him. So if you're looking for some kind of apology or explanation, you're not going to get one." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had expected her to feel at least some remorse, but instead, she was doubling down, making me out to be the villain in all of this. I hummed upon her, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could someone I had been so close to for so many years show absolutely no remorse? I had trusted her with everything, and she'd taken that trust and shattered it. I felt lost. My relationship was over, my friendship was in ruins, and it felt like there was no one I could turn to. I couldn't even confide in my usual group of friends because they were all connected to Lily in some way. I felt like I had no escape. For weeks, I isolated myself. I didn't want to go out, didn't want to run into anyone who might bring up Max or Lily. Every time I opened my phone, I saw photos of them together, looking like the perfect couple. It was nauseating. They hadn't even waited a decent amount of time before going public with their relationship. I couldn't believe how little they cared about how this would affect me. It was like they were rubbing it in my face, flaunting their new romance for everyone to see. Eventually, word got out about what had happened. People started asking questions, some sympathetic, others more interested in the drama. "How are you holding up?" they'd ask, but I could see the curiosity in their eyes. They weren't asking because they cared. They just wanted the gossip. It made me sick. I was heartbroken, and all people cared about was the spectacle of it all. The constant whispers, the side glances, the pitying looks. It was exhausting. I just wanted to disappear. One night, after what felt like an eternity of hiding away, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to get out of the house to stop wallowing in my misery. I called up a friend who wasn't part of the Max Lily social circle and asked if she wanted to grab drinks. To my surprise, she agreed right away. We went out that night, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't surrounded by reminders of what had happened, and for a few hours, I almost felt normal again. But even as I tried to move on, there was still this heavy weight in my chest. Every time I thought about Max and Lily, it felt like I was being punched in the gut. I kept replaying the betrayal in my mind, wondering what I could have done differently. Should I have seen the signs earlier? Should I have been a better girlfriend? Like Lily said, the self-doubt was eating away at me, making it impossible to heal. I knew, deep down, that their actions weren't my fault, but that didn't stop the constant questioning. At some point, I realized that I couldn't keep living like this, obsessing over what I could have done to prevent it. The reality was that Lily and Max had made their choices, and those choices had nothing to do with me. I wasn't the one who cheated. I wasn't the one who betrayed a friendship. They were, and if they could justify what they'd done by blaming me, that said more about them than it did about me. I needed to stop letting their narrative control my life. I started going to therapy shortly after that realization. I knew I needed help to work through the anger and hurt that I was carrying. My therapist helped me see that I had been holding on to guilt that wasn't mine to carry. "You didn't do anything wrong," she reminded me during one session. "What they did says everything about who they are, not who you are." It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I started to feel like I could move forward. It wasn't easy though. Moving on from that kind of betrayal takes time, and there were days when the anger and sadness would still creep up on me. I'd see a picture of Lily or Max pop up on social media, and it would send me spiraling all over again. But I was learning to control those emotions, to remind myself that their actions didn't define me. I was better off without them in my life, and the pain they had caused wouldn't last forever. As the months went by, I started to rebuild my social circle. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and slowly began to piece my life back together. I stopped obsessing over what Max and Lily were doing, stopped checking their social media accounts, and focused on myself for a change. I took up new hobbies, spent more time with family, and even started dating again. It wasn't easy, but every step I took away from them felt like a victory. One day, out of the blue, I got a message from Lily. She had the nerve to ask if we could meet up and talk. "It's been a while," she wrote. I miss you. Can we talk things out? I stared at the message in disbelief. After everything she had done, after months of radio silence, she suddenly wanted to talk things out. Part of me wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her, to unload all the anger I had been carrying. But another part of me was exhausted. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still had any control over my emotions. I didn't respond to her message. I didn't need to. I realized that I had already moved on, in my own way. I didn't need closure from her because I had found it on my own. Lily had made her choice, and Max had too. They didn't deserve a place in my life anymore, and I wasn't going to give them the opportunity to hurt me again. Ignoring her message felt like the final step in letting go of the past and taking control of my future. Max never reached out to me again after that, and honestly, I was grateful. I didn't need any more apologies, any more excuses. I had heard enough from both of them. Instead, I focused on building a life without them, one where I surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared about me. It was hard at first, but with time, I realized how much better off I was without their toxic presence in my life. I didn't need their drama. I was better than that. As I moved forward, I began to see things more clearly. Max and Lily hadn't just betrayed me. They had betrayed themselves. They had chosen to be dishonest, to hurt someone who trusted them. And that kind of behavior always comes back around. I didn't need to get revenge or see them suffer. I knew that eventually they'd have to face the consequences of their actions. Karma has a funny way of working things out, and I was content to let life take care of it. Over time, the pain started to fade. I still had moments where I'd feel a pang of hurt or anger, but they were fewer and farther between. I had grown stronger because of what happened, and I had learned to trust myself again. I realized that I was capable of standing on my own without needing validation from a relationship or a toxic friendship. I had survived the worst of it, and I was coming out the other side stronger than ever. Looking back, I can't believe how much I let Max and Lily's betrayal consume me. They had taken so much from me, my trust, my happiness, my sense of security. But in the end, I had taken back something even more important, my power. They no longer had control over my emotions or my life. I had moved on, and I was thriving in ways I never thought possible. It felt like I had finally closed that chapter of my life for good. The best part? I no longer cared what happened to Max or Lily. Whether they stayed together or broke up didn't matter to me. I had my own life to live, and I was doing just fine without them. I had surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared about me, who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. I had learned to trust again, but this time, I was more careful about who I let into my inner circle. One day, while I was out with friends, I heard through the grapevine that Max and Lily had broken up. Apparently, things had started to fall apart not long after they went public with their relationship. I wasn't surprised. Relationships built on lies and betrayal rarely last. But instead of feeling vindicated, I just felt nothing. I had moved on so completely that their drama didn't affect me anymore. It was like hearing about strangers, not people who had once been at the center of my world. As I sat there, listening to my friends gossip about Max and Lily's breakup, I realized just how far I had come. I was no longer that heartbroken girl consumed by betrayal and anger. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and I was proud of the person I had become. I didn't need closure from them. I had created my own. I had learned to heal on my own terms, and that was more powerful than any apology or explanation they could have ever given me. The experience taught me something valuable. People will let you down, but that doesn't define who you are. Max and Lily had let me down in the worst way possible, but their actions didn't determine my worth. I had picked myself up, dusted myself off, and built a new life, one that was even better than before. I had learned to rely on myself, to trust my instincts, and to value my own happiness above all else. And for that, I was grateful. I don't think I'll ever forget what Max and Lily did to me, but I no longer feel the pain or anger I once did. Instead, I feel a sense of peace. I'm no longer defined by their betrayal. I've moved on, grown stronger, and created a life I'm proud of. And as I look to the future, I know that I'm capable of facing whatever comes my way, because I've already survived the worst of it and come out stronger on the other side.